This is Growing Your Firm, the podcast for ambitious accountants and firm owners who want to work smarter, grow faster, and lead better. I'm your host, David Cristello. Let's get into it. Hey everybody, David Cristello here, founder and CEO of Jetpack Workflow and host of Growing Your Firm podcast. Today's guest is Ben Curtis. He is the co-founder and CEO at Good Measure Financial. He's been running this firm for just over 4 years. I think Ben is a really exciting story. We're going to learn a lot about what he's learned over the last 4 years, and we're going to even spend a little bit of time and zero in on some, oh boy, we'll call them growing pains that have happened unexpectedly over the last 30, 60 days. So I think it's going to be a real treat because we have an operator that's experiencing high growth, and we're going to kind of dig into that and so much more. But Ben, welcome to the show.
Thanks, David. Excited to be here and chat with you.
Absolutely. So let's just set the stage before we kind of zero in on some of the growth you've seen recently. What is Good Measure, and what kind of clients do you serve?
Yep. Yeah, we are an accounting services firm. So the blocking and tackling of bookkeeping and consultative advisory, however you want to define that. We don't do tax prep in-house. So that's one thing we don't provide. We don't do. But love being the day-to-day finance team for small business. That's kind of how we describe ourselves.
Awesome.
Yeah. And
who does tax? Who does tax, by the way?
For the folks that we work with?
Yeah.
Yeah, we've got a couple key partner relationships that we'd love to refer people out to, where we will work hand in hand with those folks. I think as time has gone by, so we started our firm in 2021, as more and more time goes by, it's actually been harder for us to have, just candidly, good, solid, consistent relationships there. So the door is open for us to, I think, do some work and be connected to other good folks in the space. But there's a handful of key tax partners that we've got that we'll pass folks back and forth with them.
Got it. And so they're branded under their own firm. You're not like white labeled in. Okay.
No. Yeah. So when I say partner, it's more like friendly relationship. Hey, here's my friend David, and they do great work. We do a lot of work with David. Work with David, and David will make it easy for you on the back end. Yeah.
Very cool. Given that you launched in 2021, I'm going to assume is this a remote firm, and then is there a specific type of client you serve?
Yep. Yeah, totally remote. So I'm based out of Knoxville, Tennessee. I have a co-founder with me in the business. We started it together. He's also in Knoxville. I've met him in my church 15 years ago. We've been very good friends ever since. So yes, we it's a COVID business born out of the the days of COVID. I was a CPA at a public accounting firm, and we started this up. So totally remote, although we are both in Tennessee.
Very cool. A couple questions. What was it? What was the tipping point where you went to your co-founder Joe and said, like, let's do this. Like, let's really do this. Were you guys meeting up for lunches, just kind of being like, yeah, we should do this? Was there something specific that just said, like, let's go?
Yeah, it's a great question. I've got a lot of gratitude for him. I mean, when we were both younger, we were college age. He's a few years older than me, but college age together at the same college, University of Tennessee. I mean, he was a mentor to me. And so talking to him about career advice, talking to him about the accounting space, vocation, all the things. So we were pretty naturally having conversations like this, in 2015 and 2013. But eventually the conversation molded into, hey, what would it look like if we started a firm together? He's been in cloud accounting since 2011 with a number of different firms. So he'd operated firms before, in many ways had been there, done that. Didn't necessarily want to operate a firm anymore. And so the conversation eventually just molded into, it's probably 2019 when we started really talking about this together. COVID caused us to take a step back, reevaluate things, and then decide to go all in anyway. So
he didn't want to run a firm. He didn't want to run a firm. How did you convince him, like, let's do it? Like, it is worth it again to kind of run a firm.
So he has a day job in SaaS that he has had since the day we have been in the firm, since the day we started the firm. So I'm running the firm, I'm operating it. He is my partner in the firm. From a hours perspective is a little bit less. He was excited to go learn SaaS, and so he's been doing that for the last couple of years. So candidly, he convinced me to do this more than I convinced him. I'm not the stereotypical entrepreneur, so I don't know that I would have done this apart from being connected to another good person from day one. So there's a lot behind that, but it has been a neat partnership.
Very cool. And so with a you tell me if this is an appropriate term or not, but with a fractional co-founder, how do you think about the division of responsibilities
Yeah.
in that relationship?
Yeah, this is where the quarterly offsites or quarterly getaways that Joe and I do are so helpful because we are reevaluating this all the time. I'd say he's fractional. Sometimes he's much more fractional. We've been in a season, we'll talk about this in a second, where we've had a lot of favor. There's great growth with team members and great growth with new clients. And so I've said, hey, buddy, what would it look like for you to be a little bit more involved and leading key relationships? And so it's a pretty open conversation. I think he's a very hard worker and he flexes when things need to be flexed. That's candidly, that's part of the answer. It wouldn't have worked if he hasn't had the attitude he's had. So he's been wonderful. But I'd say very clear role definement from day one has been key. So what the hours look like and maybe in some granular ways, who's bearing what responsibilities, that's maybe flexible. But as far as like functions of the business, who is leading functions of the business, it's really clear. And it's been really clear from day one where I sit and where he sits. I think part of that.
What is that? What is that division? How would you define it today?
Yeah. So as a president, CEO, whatever you want to call me, I'm leading operations for the firm specifically. So driving forward initiatives for our systems and change management that's going on, putting in workflow and delivery systems, client management and team management. So the HR function, like all of those things. We have 10 folks on the team today. So we're relatively small firm. It's all relative, but so that's all been my responsibility in my seat since day one. Sales and marketing, and leading some key relationships from like a CFO / business consulting side has been his role, and that's been pretty clearly his role since day one. I also say like the role of advisor is less clearly defined. But it's like, hey, we're a EOS firm, Entrepreneurial Operating System, just a framework for helping you run a business. So that's been really helpful for us in defining the roles. But even in the world of EOS, he's an advisor sitting alongside me, especially having been in a number of firms and exiting in the past. There's just a wealth of knowledge and experience that he has, good connections to other people. So there are ways where it's been very clearly defined. And there are other ways where we agree for it to be less clearly defined. And it's actually helped us. I think if we were a $10 million firm or if we had 70 FTEs, the story would be a little bit different. We wouldn't be able to be as flexible as we are now. But the flexibility has actually served us a lot as we've grown and scaled. And we've chosen the speed of our growth in many ways. We've chosen to go slow and then we've chosen to go fast. The flexibility in the roles has allowed us to do that as long as we're agreeing on that together.
Yep. So I'll ask you a question. You could say, no, David, move on, right? So given the context of how the firm was formed and knowing that, I guess fractional is a little bit unfair because fractional could mean 30 hours a week on each floor or something, right? So it's like not a pure 20, or maybe it's a 40-20, depending on the weeks, depending on the role, depending what's going on. Was it structured kind of 50-50 day one, or was it throttled differently for all the context coming into it?
When you say 50-50, you mean like
ownership,
time investment?
No, like ownership.
Yeah, ownership has not changed at all. And this is actually a great conversation.
But you're saying ownership is 50-50.
Ownership, it's 50-50, has been since day one.
Yeah.
And that's a conversation that has been really important to us, is that and I'd say like other business owners, this is important to think about as well. There's a difference between, for W-2, however you want to call it, but there's a difference between the role that I fill as an employee of the company and the role he fills as an employee of the company versus we're owners of this business. And man, when you're all in and this is your baby and you're a small company, it doesn't feel like those two things are different. We can easily conflate those two things, like it's possible to do that. But I think we've worked really hard we're always separating those things out. And we've put certain structures into the business that actually reinforce that for us. So,
like what?
We have had a commission policy where we don't have an outside or a full-time dedicated salesperson on the team today. We don't have that. We are excited to do that more and more as we grow, or to expand the sales function outside of only founder-led sales, which is functionally what we are today, is founder-led sales, which is wonderful in many ways. But we have implemented a commission policy, even for the internal team, when whether we ever pay ourselves a commission or not as owners, and we haven't ever done that, but we have this policy written out such that, okay, there's a role of salesperson for the firm that today Ben and Joe are filling. And so we want to have the infrastructure set up there, and we want to have like appropriate compensation for that set up there, so that when Ben is running a huge, wonderful company and Joe is doing other wonderful things with the company too, we're going to bring in other sales folks, and we're not figuring out how to do this for the first time, because we've implemented systems like that from day one. So we've worked pretty hard to distinguish, this is what ownership looks like. This is what our roles look like in the company. What's cool is we get to flex as we get to decide what we want the roles to look like together. But we've worked hard to try to have that delineation since day one.
Given that you mentioned EOS, one of the components of EOS is this recognition that oftentimes in two leaders or co-founders, one of them they would call the visionary, so big picture, creative, takes on high value relationships, versus what they call the integrator, which is kind of making sure the trains run on time and the details and making sure the business pulses with a level of effectiveness and efficiency. Would you describe your relationship in Joe the same way? Do you kind of fall into this integrator visionary model like to a T, or is it a little bit more contextual for you guys?
Yeah, I would not say to a T. We laugh about this a lot, actually. I am a classic integrator. Joe is only slightly less a classic integrator. So neither of us are really true visionaries. He was filling in prior firms. He was leading back in the day. He was totally filling the integrator role as well. I will say he is more visionary than me. And so even that, when we talked about role definition, our first couple of years, it was like, buddy, Joe, you are filling the role of visionary because you just have to. Of the two of us, you have to. While at the same time being aware, like, this is maybe not the classic or perfect definition here. I'm going to also, I would say when we run on EOS, I would say we run on EOS Lite. I've talked about this in different workshops and such. Like, we have found a way to make EOS work for us. We've kept what's good and we're throwing out what's bad, or just not helpful or relevant for us at our size. So anyway, I think one way we filled that gap is that we have a wonderful network of other folks. Some of them are people in this space, lots of people you've had on your podcast in the past, in the accounting space in particular, who just see the world different, gifted in different types of ways. There's also folks that are totally outside of the space that we've leaned on. So for coaching and mentoring and guiding, and still, it is a bit of a, candidly, it's just, if we are perfect EOS adopters, we do have a bit of a gap in that right now. And we're okay with that. I think, like, in many ways, the pros outweigh the cons. The juice is worth the squeeze. But yeah, we fight about who's the least visionary between the two of us.
The just one more follow up on EOS, because we've heard it on the show, just like, I think a lot of people say, oh, we're an EOS shop. I think most are probably like an EOS Lite. Most people will go through the toolkit and say, I like these three, these two don't work, this three has changed us. What's one of the tools or frameworks that you're like, this has really helped us? And what's one that you're like, you know what, for our firm at this time, like, we're just going to discard it?
That's a good question. The VTO, so this Vision Traction Organizer, it's basically like a one-pager of what's going on with the business, who are you, core values, who are you trying to be as an organization, like a 1, 3, 10-year plan, and then quarterly initiatives or quarterly rocks. That has been so valuable for us. And really, that's what EOS helps you do. It's just a framework. It's nothing special. But what it helps you do is focus on what's important and appropriately slot in the less important things. So that's been game-changing for us because it's so simple, and we share it with our team. So like, hey, these are our core values. This is our 10-year target. This is our marketing strategy. And we're doing the best we can with these things. Another one that's been huge is just the L10s. So like regular one-to-ones with each team member, we do it. And we adjust it a little bit. There's L10 meetings that the leadership team will have together. But every single team member, there's a weekly one-to-one following the same structure. So it helps us stay focused on what we need to stay focused on.
What is that structure? What's the structure of the L10, just at a high level?
Yeah, it's how is it's like so in a 60-minute schedule, it's how is life? So checking in like what's going on with each other. We'll do a quick metric overview. So if it's a team member in production, it'll be like the metrics that we're tracking for your role or your scorecard we're tracking for your role. What does that look like? Client check-ins. This is where there might be specific client stories or issues to work on together. And then an IDS. So that's like identify, discuss, and solve issues together. And that's going to be more like company-wide stuff, or this piece of technology we're having a hard time adopting, or this segment of clients. I'd never answer that. We're industry agnostic, by the way. So we have clients all across the board in many different ways. We care about their psychographic, like how do they think? Who are they as people? That's what we'd lean into as far as niching. But industry, it's all kinds of different stuff. So we've got a lot of different things to talk about. What's the tech stack that's best fit for them? And then like coaching opportunities. So their quarterly rocks. How are we helping them grow and accomplish what they want to do? And we're hitting those same things, that same structure over and over. So there's consistency, there's expectation. They know what to be prepared for. There's no surprises. That has served us a ton.
Yeah. Maybe we'll get to the ones you don't use, but I have some offshoot questions. What are the production KPIs that you're looking at every week in those individual meetings? What are 2, 3, 4, 5 that you're looking at weekly?
Yeah. So controversial, but we track time. We're all in on tracking time. It's just so helpful for us.
Most do. That's the secret of the industry. Right?
And it is a secret. It is a secret because folks don't want to say it out loud. And I mean, there's been ebbs and flows. And so if we may be in a bit of the pendulum, I think, is swinging a bit back more towards that these days.
Yeah, we found 80-something% track time.
Okay. Wow. Yeah.
When we've done surveys, and we thought it would be more maybe 64, given how adamant people are against tracking time.
That's right.
When we would do these surveys, we're like, I don't know, is it 50-50? Are they doing revenue based ratios with headcount? But like the large majority are. So anyways, so time so one of your KPIs is what? Time based.
Yeah. So the KPI, who cares about the time? The KPI behind it is we're tracking. We try to do a really, really good job of scoping out client engagements on the front end and breaking it down in a pretty granular way. The one thing that's always true about a forecast is that it's never going to be perfectly right. But I think we do a pretty good job. We have a pretty tight discovery process that's locked in with prospects on the front end. So what it leads to is what we think a really locked in, like monthly expectation, a time budget, if you will, for a client. So what is that going to look like to service them here and there? So the metric that we're looking at is folks are tracking time, and we're able to get data in a pretty granular way on what did it look like to service the client in this period of time. If we were way over what we expected, okay, let's have a conversation. What's the story? There's always a story. So that's what we're talking about in these metrics. It's not just what's your metric and did you take too long or did you not? It's like it might bubble up a coaching opportunity or an education opportunity for the team member. It might bubble up, we need to rein this client in some. It might just be, hey, no one's doing anything wrong. We just need to recommunicate some expectations. Sometimes the client just has things blow up for them and like, okay, we are not going to be profitable on them for a bit. We love this relationship. It's worth it for whatever reason. We're going to just eat it because we want to take care of them, because we think there's going to be good on the other side. The time tracking allows us to actually have all those conversations. So that's a big one. For other roles.
So it's actuals versus budget for a client on a monthly basis. Is that
right?
Is that
by service line too? So like payroll specifically, or a month-end close specifically, or bill pay specifically.
All under a specific client, or do you slice things like clients on one report and then service lines on another report?
Both and. So yeah, okay. We'll do it all together. We'll get really granular. And that's where the one-to-ones are so helpful. And the thought of this, it's so not Big Brother. Like I've worked really hard to, we want to instill a sense of ownership in the team. And our team has done wonderfully with this, actually, where they come to these meetings and they say, hey, we struggled a little bit on bill pay over the last 3 months, but here's the story, Ben, and this is the plan for turning it around. And I'm like, great, I trust you. We're going to be okay. We really just care about the story. The team is so bought into how we serve and the way we serve, and metrics tell part of the story, or time budgets, they tell part of the story, but they don't tell the whole story. So we're slicing it by client, but also by service line by client, and also for me as the firm leader, just service line period. Like do we suck at payroll? Are we just struggling,
Yeah.
Across the board with payroll right now? Okay, what's the story there? So it allows us to do that.
What's another one or two that show up in his?
Another so we have a pod structure, is our team structure, and so we'll call it a client lead. It's like an accounting manager, senior technical person, and they're responsible for the relationship. And so maybe they'll have 20, 30 clients. It all depends based on client size and revenue, of course, but they'll lead the client engagement, and we'll have a couple of folks on the bookkeeping team that's working to supporting them. So that client lead in particular, they are responsible for this portfolio. Let's just say it's 25 grand of MRR, something like that. And we're talking about that portfolio. And so there's even an effective hourly rate. What's our target that we want to hit? So just making this up, if we wanted to hit $100 an hour, effective hourly rate, and on $1,000 a month client, then we got 10 hours that we can dedicate to this client this month. Hey, client lead, how's that going? They might only be putting in 10% of the man hours to actually service it, but they're responsible for leading, for coaching, for teaching and training. What are the gaps, and what's the story that's going on with the client? And so it's similar to what I was just sharing with you earlier, like it bubbles up good conversations, but we're holding the client lead accountable specifically to like, hey, how are we doing on our target effective hourly rate? And then what's the story behind that? It's always story.
Yeah. And that allows you to keep that margin within your target by tracking the effective hourly rate.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Okay. Final question. Is anything else on production? I'm just a production nut. So is there any other KPIs you track that you think are useful? Or those the two where 80%, 90% of the value is driven?
Most everything comes from that. There's separate things for us in when we get more granular, or we make the time period more compact. So most everything we look at is on a monthly basis, but we totally have this inter-month seasonality. Most of our deliverables we are providing to our clients in like a 7-day window, the 15th to the 20th or 25th. And so what we try to do is like evaluate the team's capacity. So that's the other big one. You talk about production, it's like capacity. What does capacity actually look like? And we work our butts off to try to smooth this out across a month or a
What do you mean?
as much as we can.
What are you doing?
Yeah, it's front loading the work as much as we can. I mean, tangibly, what that looks like sometimes is weekly workflows for something that may not be necessary to do, but monthly. But what it does is it makes that the 5th through the 20th of the month, it makes it a little bit lighter. We can breathe a little bit more when we do that. So weekly workflows on certain things, really pushing context gathering from clients. So chasing is what takes so much time when you're delivering financials or delivering a client product. We just don't have context for something, so we have to chase it. Well, we are proactively getting context, and there's a lot of great tools out there that help with doing that, but it's this logical thought of how do you proactively get context that allows us to smooth our workflow out. So those are things that we've leaned into really heavily to try to take some of the burden off in this tight window.
In the second, yeah. What's an example? You mentioned these weekly workflows. Like what did you install in those first 2 weeks to help offset the peak workload in weeks 3 and 4?
It's things that we would be doing in a monthly or a quarterly, whatever the cadence is, cycle anyway, but we're getting into it in a pretty granular way sooner than we need to. So, very simple things like weekly reconciliations of a clearing account where there's wild amounts of revenue and deposit activity going on, where it's so gnarly, like you might say batch processing this would be the most efficient way to handle it. You should not do this on a weekly basis. You should do it on a monthly basis. For the sake of our team's life, we have chosen, like, we're going to have a little bit more time. We're going to have a little bit more frequent touches on our workflow to allow the team to, reconciliations of things. Many of our clients are just pretty gnarly, pretty complex. There's a broad tech stack because we are industry agnostic. And so being able to there's a lot of pulling in of data. There's a lot of syncing of data where most of our clients are on QBOs, the general ledger, but all across the board on revenue systems. And we're often involved in invoicing and revenue to a great degree as well. So these weekly workflows that allow us to pull data in, perform reconciliation, to stay on top of AR, those types of things that are less efficient, maybe for us to do that on a regular cadence, allows our team to breathe a little bit more in a closed cycle.
Yeah, I love that. So let's transition. You mentioned that the last couple weeks here, you've experienced some growth. So let's unpack that. What do you mean by that? You experience, well, my words, some growth. You might say more than some growth. So what's been going on?
Yeah. I mean, just very quickly taking a step back. So when we started in 2021, I came from public accounting. I tried to come in as a humble dude who realized there's a lot I just have not done in this space before. And so we really intentionally grew slowly. So we got the right team members in place. We got the right systems in place, things that we feel pretty confident in, that would just building a solid foundation. We spent, I mean, a year and a half, it's all relative, but we spent a year and a half to 2 years being maybe smaller than we needed to. But it was the right call for us to do. Along the way, what we've been doing that whole time is we're always working our network. How can we add value? How can we serve people? So it's a lot of conversations. I mean, I just mentioned to you, like my business partner, one of the main functions that he's filling right now is a sales and marketing role. Well, specifically what that looks like in many ways is work in relationships and work in the network, and I'm spending quite a lot of time doing the same thing. It's things like this, like where we are founder led in most of our sales efforts. We can tell the story. We can share the story. So a lot of relationships that we've built great connections with other people locally and across the country. Tax preparing CPAs that we just, I think, have proven worth and proven value to. We've invested in that a lot and have grown at a reasonable pace, but we were intentionally pretty slow. Coming into 2025.
So before we get into 2025, so kind of the growth strategy was find great partners, connect with great people, business leaders, tax prep centric firms, and start building bridges and building trust. Has that been kind of the main driver? Is like, it's not been outbound email or pay-per-click ads or SEO. You might do some of those things now, but a lot of us, what I would call hand-to-hand combat. We're having a lot of conversations with a lot of people to let them know who we are and who we serve and what our lane is. Is that fair to say?
That was certainly true those first couple of years for sure.
Okay.
And I mean, we took the shotgun method of everything you just said. We dabbled in that some. Probably part of why I wasn't successful, because we were dabbling. But yeah, we just were working the network, working relationships. We've gotten to know a lot of folks in our like more regional business area as well, localities as well. So relationships like that I think it's one of the benefits of my partner Joe has built a great reputation. He is a servant. He takes care of people. And so he's been doing that since 2011 in this space. You just get to know people, you get to build trust. And so there are many ways where we didn't really capitalize on that. We didn't really pull on that very much. Coming in, and we've grown. We ended 2024 with like 5.5 FTEs, 6 FTEs, something like that. We have 10 folks on our team right now. And this Q1, Q2 of 2025, a lot of investment that we have made relationally has just paid off and cashed in, if you want to call it that. We've closed a lot of deals with good folks, good people that we want to work with, the people that fit our psychographic, that they're happy to work with our team. They fit into our systems. They have a need that we genuinely can meet. But I mean, it's been 90 days ish of there's not really a good reason for why this is happening. It's systematically, what we've done systematically is we've made a lot of deposits into relationships, and this season there's just been some reaping from those deposits, some withdrawals.
Yeah. So you were at 6 FTEs, you're now at 10. You did that in 90 days. Does that essentially correlate with the revenue growth you experienced between then and now?
More or less, yeah.
Yeah, that's incredible.
And there's trickle down effects. Like you've got to bring people, when there's growth like that, you have to be able to do it well. And so we've worked hard to, how do we do this well? We want the team to be in good shape. We want the systems to be in good shape. So we've had to work pretty hard to do that well, but I think it is going well.
I struggle to ask this question, but I will anyways, which is, how do you, I guess, show up in a way where like you said, you made a lot of deposits. Like, what does that mean? What does that tactically look like, right? Because, people might listen to this, and I don't want to, there's probably a way to have a conversation that builds relation, and there's probably a way to have a conversation where you're trying to get a deal immediately. So I'm just wondering, like, some practical advice for people that maybe are listening and they're resonating with this, like, slow build, slower growth. Like, we're gonna make the investment in relationship. Like, what does that mean? Like, what are examples of something you started
Yeah.
2 years ago that just happened to pay off right now? And like, what kind of conversations? Like, how does that thing unfold?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, we've spent so much time thinking about this. And I do think you have to be shrewd. I mean, we are all limited on our time, and you want to make deposits into the things that you think will bear fruit. We don't always know for sure, but you do have to be shrewd with your time. And so there were key relationships that they've gotten more time investment, or folks that we had good reason to think this is going to bear fruit. So,
What's an
also,
example? Yeah, like,
yeah, there's
very like
so
like a
we serve a lot of churches. So like a third of our clients are churches and nonprofits. We didn't seek that out when we started the firm. It's kind of just fallen into our lap. Very specifically, that there is an individual that we got connected to, that is an administrator, very important person with a well-connected person with a group of churches. That individual had really specific needs, and I've known him for 8 years. And so just on a personal level, I've had conversations about, hey, how can we, have segregation of duties inside of church accounting? There's notoriously, not great segregation of duties in a nonprofit or in a church, So how can we do that? How can we implement technology to help that? Just doing all that from a friendly perspective, like this is,
Yeah.
I'm not getting paid to do this. He doesn't really want to pay me to do this. But down the road, I've, made deposits having friendly conversations like that for 3 years, 4 years, 8 years now. And eventually he says, hey, what would it look like for good measure to serve one of these churches? And one turned into two, which turned into more. And now there's this, so it's not a denominator, but there's a lot of connections that have, that's just yielding more and more fruit. That was something where it was shrewd on my end to be connected to this individual, to continue to serve him, And also, I think it was pretty clear on his end, I was not loudly and obviously trying to get something from him in 30 days. Does that make sense? Like, I really did. I wanted to be a giver. And some of that's just worldview stuff. Like, I just want to do that as a person, period. I'm still really limited, so I've got to be pretty specific in what am I giving to, and who am I giving
that's
to?
right.
So I think we all have to make those decisions, but that's one specific example. I had a relationship with someone, and shrewdly, saw, I think this could be a win-win. There's not that many people in my life where I would feel that way. But what's been neat though is, as this network continues to grow, actually I'm meeting more and more people like that, where I could spend 40 hours a week doing conversations like this, David. We're just giving to each other. And so I've been really intentional to carve out a section of my time every week where this is what I do. I reach out to people to schedule meetings with them, to have conversations like this and see how I can give to them.
And what is that? Is that 10 hours a week, roughly 5 hours a week? Like, how do you balance it with all of your operational duties?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly gone down in the last 20 years, just from the sake of being pragmatic. But it has ebbed and flowed. Every quarter, I'm reevaluating this, like how much time, candidly, part of what it aligns with is like, what else do we have going on? Yeah, production-wise, initiative-wise in the firm that I'm accountable to and responsible for. But I'd say on average, probably like 5 hours a week. And that's like outreach, scheduling meetings for the next couple weeks and months, and then an actual chat. If I can have 2 of those conversations a week, to be completely honest, that feels like a massive win for me. And it's seasonal, there are ebbs and flows. If you're a tax person, you're probably not doing that much January through April. You can do a ton in the summer.
Yeah, to think about that, somewhat downstream conversation. Maybe it stems from one of those, deposits you're making. Maybe it just comes from a out of left field referral. What have you learned about founder-led sales and your founder-led sales process that's been useful for you? Like, so let me take a step back. It sounds like you're doing pretty well closing clients. And is that the positioning of the firm, the services you sell, or have you learned, I find sometimes for, founders of firms, they really get queasy around sales, and closing clients, right? Like they almost want the client to like beg them for the contract rather than like coach the client along to the natural conclusion that would help them best with their business.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you say that. I was just chatting with one of my friends that we both know in this space last week, and she was ripping to pieces this idea of founder-led sales and talking to me about how it's holding firms back. So there's different ways to do this well, and I think there's pros and cons. So I definitely want to be humble and acknowledge that this has worked really well for us, though, at our current size too. Up to where we're at right now. And I think there's a story behind it that's always compelling to prospects, and that I think is why our close rate is relatively high. So I mean, the top of our funnel, if we have a funnel getting folks in, it may not be that broad, it might not be that, it just may be a little bit narrower, but it's almost like a cylinder where when people get in, close rate, it's, just goes down. It doesn't shrink that much at the bottom. We close pretty highly. I do think the fact that myself or Joe is a part of most of, there's a lot of nuance here, but is a part of the process in some way. I do think that that's part of why we're closing. So that's one thing we've learned is like, close rate can be very effective. If you believe, this is all stuff we've all heard 1,000 times, but if you actually believe what you're doing is legitimately helpful for people, and you don't try to sell something that isn't actually helpful, I think most people sniff that out. Most prospects will sniff that out. I have been called out on that in the past, and like, you're right, this isn't helpful for you. And I think I've learned from that. Once you get to a spot where you're a little more stable as a business too, I think it just helps. It helps to, you take on what you want to take on and you sell what you believe in. You don't sell what you don't believe in. It is actually very fun for me. This is one of the most enjoyable parts. I don't think I'm a stereotypical accountant in that way. I love leading people. I love leading people to solutions. So there's pros and cons to it for us.
Yeah. Ben, this has been a real treat. You mentioned mentors, coaches, communities you've been involved in. Anyone you want to, or any couple people you want to give a shout out to before we wrap it up and tell people how to get connected with you?
Oh, that's great. Man, where do I start? That I would be remiss if I didn't point out my partner, Joe, first. He's just been, we're 50-50 in this thing, but he has been a wonderful, wonderful mentor, wonderful helper. Ted Callahan has been a wonderful resource to me as a man and as a leader in SaaS in particular in the space, wanting to drive the future forward. Corey Kernoyer is a younger man than I am, but he's been a very helpful friend and resource thinking through leading in this space and leading people well. Michael Lee has been a wonderful resource to me, as he has been to many other people as well. So there's a lot of other folks on that list, but I am standing on the shoulders of giants. There's a lot of people who have helped me get to where I am today, and I'm a thankful man.
I love it. Ben, if somebody wants to reach out, say thank you, get connected with you, what's the best way for them to do so?
Yeah, I'd love them. Just reach out on LinkedIn or even just send me a personal note. I'm fine sharing that here. My email is ben@goodmeasurefinancial.com. Would love to chat with folks.
Awesome. If you could jot down all the notes from today's interview, you can go to jetpackworkflow.com/blog. We'll do a full write-up. We'll link it up. We'll link up to Ben, to Joe, to some of the people he mentioned, to the site, to EOS, everything else. If you enjoyed today's episode, leave a review. Help us get the word out. If you really enjoyed it, share it. You don't even have to tag us. It's nice if you do. It's great. We'll be happy if you do that. But just forward it. Email, text somebody. If Ben said something that really ignited a new way of thinking, or you think it helps somebody, please share it along. It's a great way to just say thanks to Ben for coming on. But that said, Ben, thanks for coming on. This has been a real treat.
Thanks, David. It was a blast.